welcome to Reed's Spider-Man Crawl Space Edition. Check us out at the SpiderManCrawlspace.com. Well, guys, sorry about last week here. Had a lot of craziness come up and just time got away, but now it's all good. And I'm here, of course, to review last week's and this week's Spider-Man titles from Amazing Spider-Man 91, aka 891, and of course 91, 892. As we lead to the end of Spider-Man Beyond, and of course I will talk about, of course, Ben Reilly Spider-Man #2 by good old J.M. DeMantis and Belden, as well as talk about the tie-in issues, of course, with Spider-Man Devil's Reign tie-in by Piper Thing on the Return of the Rose. So let's get going with the main Amazing Spider-Man issue, shall we? So going on here with the pros on issue 90. This is a well-done issue. Patrick Gleason, I mean, I knew he was a very good writer besides artist, but he really nails the incentive and the narrative really good here with, Peter coming into the rescue and battling the Queen Goblin. And actually, it's a really amazing fight as, the two of them actually battle into each other, him using the tricks, of course, and Spider-Man is, even though he's down and still injured, Peter does know the different tricks with the Goblin, but I think I really like how the fact the Queen Goblin works here. She's a little bit more malice and more brutal too, but what's really amazing is how she actually outsmarts Spider-Man, since the fact this is, of course, Ashley Crawford clone made into the new Goblin. She definitely used psychosis to actually trick out, since she understands how Spider-Man works. And it's really well done. It's really well choreographed by Mark Bagley. And when he finally gets the Goblin stare from her, the fact that we see Peter going through all these issues, everything was crazy, but the fact that, of course, he reaches out to stop him because of the words from Ben Reilly. It's well done with the story as he pushes himself up, gets out, avoids it, and then goes in to join, of course, Ben to go on and take out Staten Island as well as the pieces. It's pretty nicely done, and it's nice getting everything kind of brought into it. There isn't really a lot of things, put in with the supporting cast between, of course, Black Cat and Mary Jane wanting to help them and all of this, and of course with Janine kind of pushed off to the sidelines as Ben rushes off the Staten Island with Peter to battle it. It's really well done, but some of the cons is now we definitely feel like this is end. But of course, the whole little pieces that are happening with Maxine Danger and the fact that she's like, well, you're supposed to do this, but she kind of screwed up the whole thing, our Queen Goblin, and now they're heading to Staten Island, so now they've really screwed up, so I guess we're just going to have to go, scorch earth on this. It's not too bad, and, the pace in the story is really good with the different characterizations, battle between Peter and Ashley as Spider-Man and the Queen Goblin, and of course leading over to Staten Island, and the fact that Ben, of course, is tearing with so much issues with his mind messed up. It's a guy's psychosis of the storyline that's pretty well done, and I kind of really enjoyed it from the art to the story, so it gets a solid A from me. It's a very good issue. However, moving issue 91, aka 892 by Thompson and Pacciali, where we pick up as Peter and Ben head over to Staten Island to the secret base of Beyond the Source Bio thing. Let's get into the pros. It doesn't waste any time. Honestly, the characterization in the battle between Peter and Ben is actually well done. Not are they acting like friends, but they're actually acting like brothers, which they were established a while. Thompson really kind of narrows the voices pretty well. It's between Peter and Ben as they get into the secret lab of Beyond headquarters as they approach Door Z. But at the same time that's kind of where it kind of goes. As much as I like the fact that the, Daughters of the Dragon, Misty Knight and Colleen coming in to help them, and of course their favorite car, the fact that they're actually pulling in from what will be the mini-series coming up here in a couple weeks, explaining how they get to Staten Island. It's kind of cool how they kind of all bring all this together to, of course, battle it. And of course, some of the monsters and characters that are in the lab are actually pretty comical, but it's stuff that's been dropped here and there and so forth. And I do like the fact that we're getting such a much dark side here as Ben struggles to get towards the controls in Door Z, how Maxine Danger is pretty much teasing about, hey, you might be broken, but we built you, and the truth is you belong still to us, Ben. So unless you want to see your friends perish under all the craziness and make me do this, I will do it, which really kind of points there. She goes from that from corporate to, of course, classic supervillain. But that's really what the good parts of the story end, because that goes right into the cons. The fact that we get to all this big revelation what Door Z is. Ben just says, well, screw it, Maxine. I'm just going to open the door for you. I'm going to let Peter and Colleen and Misty fight them. I'm going to come to the building and kick your butt. It's like, what? Ben basically just drops them all. As much as the psychosis of seeing Ben constantly look at his Spider-Man mask during the story to kind of see how there's a hole in him since he himself is not whole because the memory dies, it just doesn't make sense the fact he did it. Plus, also, as we get to this big cliffhanger of what Door Z is, we find out what happened to the Lizard, the fact that he's behind door Z and he's been mutated or whatever because of Beyond Corp. And it kind of just makes you go, that's the big reveal. As much as Peter's reaction, as well as Colleen and Misty's night as everything, since they're the ones who brought the Lizard, who of course is separated from Kirk Connors now as his own being after what happened in Sinister War. It kind of is a letdown. It's a shock to see what this monstrous vampire lizard is, but when it's all done and two, this is probably the weakest it's actually been done before we get to the last couple issues here from Zeb Wells before Spider-Man Beyond ends. It just feels wrong. The characterization and stuff is kind of strong to the fun, but then having all these goofy monsters and creation as they're battling through them, the banter is funny, but it just feels odd. It's not really feels like a Spider-Man story. It feels like, well, the story's coming to an end soon. Here's Maxine laughing in her big, literally ivory tower to do things. It's kind of like, huh? What? Okay. Okay, I get it. But after it's all done and we get to the end of the story, while the artwork is fantastic by Sarah Pellier, the story is just not right. It feels not only rushed, but the big revelation of Dora Z, even though it was planted quite a while ago in the Daughters of the Dragon Beyond one shot, just feels like out of left field. And the fact that she threatens, hey, don't make me open Dora Z. Hey, we might have to do Dora Z, everybody. Ben's like, okay, I'll open Dora Z. Why are you doing that? Oh, no. No, Ben, don't come hurt me. I'm sorry. Don't hurt me. D plus. Sorry, folks. D plus. It just doesn't. The artwork is fantastic, but it's just like, boom. No. So I'm sorry, folks. Issue 91, aka 892, is getting a D plus from me. I really thought it just kind of crashed and burned when Ben just basically opens to go get revenge on Maxine. And of course, we do see Janine briefly too, how she's like, well, I'm not going to just stand here. I'm going to go do something. Okay. You did a lot all of a sudden, Janine. All of a sudden, you don't want to be there. So, okay, sure, whatever. D plus, folks. Sorry. Okay, I will now come back into me. There we go. Well, guys, let's get on over to the Devil's Reign Spider-Man one-shot here as Ben battles, of course, the returned Richard Fisk, a.k.a. the Rose, who we, of course, haven't seen since, of course, way back in King's Ransom, back when Nick Spencer hears. So let's get into Piper and Sellers' issue. So first of all, the pros. This is actually nice because it really connects what's been going on with Ben over in the Devil's Reign miniseries. He really gets how he's been brutal and down. And we actually see a kind of much more kinder version between Ben and Marcus, because it's really good. Something that's been really happening through the entire Spider-Man Beyond story has been the relationship between Ben and Marcus, since Marcus, of course, has got to be Ben's handler, but he does consider him his friend. And this issue works really well as he's kidnapped by the Rose. He's tortured just for him to get, of course, into getting Spider-Man back to, of course, be destroyed and do something, as he says, his father could never do, which is truly destroy Spider-Man, even if it's a new Spider-Man. And I think that's really nice, is you really get into the mind of the Rose here. We actually see Richard Fisk, who he was, how he was kind of in the shadow of his father as a Kingpin, his death, and now his resurrection, what he's been doing in the meantime. So it's really nice being little lip service to what happened to him in King's Ransom storyline. And the artwork is fantastic, but I really just love the characterization between Richard Fisk and how he's using the Thunderbolts troop, the Catcher, Ben Reilly, and Ben getting hurt. And I really like the fact we actually see, Beyond Corp actually technically caring about Ben. They help him. They basically pull him. They say, we can't do too much, but he is technically a private asset of Beyond Corporation, which is a loophole, basically saying, hey, you can't hurt him, Mayor Fisk. And then, of course, him trying to recover, and they said even though it is enhanced ability, he needs a couple days off. And Maxine's like, forget that. We got a real problem. Marcus got kidnapped. We got to save our own people and go for here. It's actually a humane society of Maxine we have not seen through the main Beyond storyline. And Piper really just hits it pretty well. The characterization is fantastic. I love how Ben ends up going and rescuing Marcus, battling the Rose, seeing all the pieces there. It is very well done. I love the little couple pieces and nods to the original Devil's Reign story, but the story stands off on a really nice piece between Ben and the battle with the Rose, from the characterization, the mind, to, of course, Ben and Marcus actually getting up on the Rose and beating him and actually dropping him off in a Spider-Man costume, basically to arrest Spider-Man, since Mayor Fisk is doing all this in the current storyline. It's really nice, and it does fit in way before what happens here with the whole Door Z and the conclusion, the Spider-Man Beyond. So it's well done, and I just wish that we would have seen more of this between Maxine Danger and Marcus and Beyond Corp and actually the whole thing, because it really captures more of what they're doing with the super hand. Cons aren't too much, because the sad thing is, why it's paying lip service to the King's Ransom story for Spencer, this is kind of a done in one, as the Rose, after all the big things and having the characterization and who he was, it kind of just falls flat with him being defeated. And we know for a fact that he'll get out of this, considering the fact that, you know, he was dressed up, and Kingpin will, of course, fix his son, even though his son is already planning to hopefully one day replace his father once he's out of the picture as the new Kingpin of crime. It really brings back who Richard Fisk is, and the storyline's really well, and actually having Ben actually beaten, you're actually rooting for Ben in this storyline, and actually hoping Marcus is going to be okay. And while the jokes in that are fantastic, as well as how everything gets lured into here, the story could have been a little bit used in a main story in a much larger one. So I feel like it's a lip service issue, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to give it a B+. Not too bad, gentlemen. Well, I saved the best, truly the best for last. Woo! Let me go off green screen. I'm back, everybody. It's time for Ben Reilly, Spider-Man, issue number 2 miniseries by J.M. DeMantis and Bolton. Let's get into the pros. First of all, this issue just picks right up where it left it. I love the fight scene between Ben Reilly and the Scorpion as he's trying to figure out how the Scorpion knows who he is, and of course the battle between them. And it really works well because even though Ben's a clone, he remembers all the things about Matt Gorgon, and I really like the fact that JM actually pops into the whole little research and private detective who Matt Gorgon was, who was originally hired by J. Jonah Jameson. That was played a lot much into Mark Miller's Spider-Man, about how he discovered who Peter Parker was as Spider-Man, and of course how right here, how he does the clues and the information for Ben Reilly. It's well done. I really like a good use of it, because why Ben gets really into the Scorpion and how much the Scorpion just throws innocent people in the way. The fact that Ben overcomes them and deals with it is really cool, but it's also interesting when it's all said and done, as the Scorpion gets away and Ben, of course, heads over to Ravencroft and find out that Matt Gargan's been there since the end of the original Spider-Man Unlimited issue where we last saw him as a Scorpion. So it's really interesting how that's happened. I also like how J.M. DeMantis is really taking the relationships and the friendships that were originally stand in the original Ben Reilly Spider-Man series back in the 90s and kind of started establishing them between Ashley Crawford's assistant, as well as the relationship between Ashley Kafka and everybody else in it. It's well done characterizations that actually see Ben struggling in this and also trying to figure out the mystery. And speaking of the mystery, it leads into a bigger one. While we don't know who the dating killer is in the storyline, it definitely brings in so much interesting of why they're doing it and why it's going to play into Ben. It takes a nice mystery as well as playing the weird things that are going on in the different halls of Ravencroft. Can we get a very, American Horror Story, but in a superhero setting? It's well done, and the art is great. The only cons I have, and I feel like some of the things, especially when Ben heads with the Ashley's assistant into the movie theater, see Dove Fisher, while Ben's trying to do a nice thing as a regular person with him, it kind of feels out of place, especially when the diner friends show up, and it just kind of feels a little bit much like, I get that they're trying to have Ben have a nice little date outside, and we really didn't see a lot of his social life during his run as Spider-Man. It was there, but unfortunately it started wrapping up faster and going bye-bye before, Ben's original death in Revelations. I also like to pull out of a lot of Ben Reilly's actual villains and rogues galleries that was established from what he had with the Scorpion, some of Peter's classic rogues gallery with the Chameleon, who was left in the parts, the death of Kraven the Hunter. But I really like the fact that end cliffhanger would, of course, Caroline Traynor, the second Dr. Octopus, Lady Octopus, and acknowledging how, Doc Ock was dead at this time and how she was trying to fill that legacy. Even though it's a nice cliffhanger, it's fun to see that part because we don't really see a lot of that characterizations and thought process that went on with Ben Reilly. So if you're a fan of Ben Reilly or really didn't know on anybody else, the issue hits all the right nodes and keeps the mystery going too, despite some small things with the supporting cast. So I'm giving it a solid A. I really enjoyed the issue. I think it was well done, and I know we still got 3 issues, and unfortunately, Spider-Man Beyond's coming to end, but this seems to be more of my Ticket Ben series. I hate to say it, but the mini-series and this one-shot here with Devil's Reign, Spider-Man with Rose, were better Ben Reilly issues than actually what's been going on in Spider-Man Beyond. So definitely tells you how much I'm ready for this storyline to start. So from A to D plus to B plus to a nice solid A. Not a bad run for Spider-Man series. And that note, guys, I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spider-Man Crawl Space. I want to give a big shout out to Mark and Peter for all their reviews they do too. I know I don't give them enough credit on the Spider-Man reviews, but guys, you're my buds. You are out there all the time typing, getting all your revelations, getting all your pictures and everything. I think you do a fantastic job on these reviews. So I want to give a shout out to the rest of the reviewers that, of course, always got my back when, of course, Mr. Me, Busy Life, gets busy, too busy with these reviews to miss them. So guys, thank you so much. I don't give you enough credit, and I think you guys do a fantastic job. And for more of that, wonderful reviews and everything else, check us out, the Spider-Man Crawl Space, for all the information. Also, check us on our social media channels, especially Discord and the podcast here, as we have the latest reviews and information on Spider-Man. And on that note, guys, I am out of here. I'll see everybody later on the Crawl Space.